My world stopped the second he walked in. It wasn't the old man I'd grown to cherish, the one whose quiet presence had become the steady rhythm of my mornings. No, this was his grandson, a man I'd never seen before, with two lawyers in sharp suits flanking him like vultures. The smell of coffee and cinnamon that usually filled the diner suddenly felt thin, replaced by the metallic scent of trouble. They didn't come for coffee. They came for a fight, and my simple act of kindness was apparently about to cost me everything. I stood there, wiping down a table that didn't need it, my heart hammering against my ribs. I had no idea that the quiet bond I'd formed with a lonely old man was about to be twisted into a weapon against me, in a battle I never knew I was a part of. Section 1, the beginning of a friendship, before the lawyers, before the ugly accusations, before my life was turned completely upside down, there was just me and Mr. Martin. I'm June, a waitress at the Sunny Spoon Diner, trying to piece together a life from tips and long shifts. And he was Mr. Martin, a man who seemed to carry the weight of 100 silent years on his shoulders. He first came in on a Tuesday. I only remember because it was raining, a relentless, dreary downpour that kept most people home. But not him. He shuffled in, coat damp, and took the corner booth, the one with the cracked vinyl that nobody ever wanted. He ordered black coffee and a single piece of dry toast. He didn't say much, just a mumbled "thank you" when I brought his order. I was 26, working double shifts to cover my rent and chipping away at a mountain of student loans for a degree I wasn't even using. My life was a repeating loop of taking orders, refilling coffee, and smiling when I really didn't feel like it. I was lonely, in that specific way you can only be when you're surrounded by people all day. I saw hundreds of faces, heard snippets of 100 lives, but none of them were mine. Mr. Martin became a constant. Every single morning, at 7:15 a.m., the bell above the diner door would jingle, and he'd be there. Same booth, same coffee, same 1,000-yard stare out the window. In the beginning, it was purely transactional. I'd bring him his coffee, he'd leave a few coins on the table. But I started to notice things. The slight tremor in his hands when he lifted his cup. The way his eyes would linger on families laughing in other booths, a flicker of something sad and distant in their depths. One day, I saw he was struggling to read the newspaper, squinting in the dim diner light. The next morning, I made sure the bulb above his booth was replaced with a brighter one. He didn't say anything, but I saw him glance up at the light, and for the first time, he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod in my direction. That was the start. It became my own private mission to add a little light to his quiet mornings. I started saving the corner piece of the apple pie for him, the one with the most crust, because I noticed he always ate his toast crust first. I'd make sure his coffee was a little fresher, a little hotter. They were small things, insignificant to anyone else. But in the silent world of Booth 4, they felt like conversations. I wasn't doing it for a bigger tip, he always left the exact same amount. I was doing it because his loneliness felt familiar. It echoed a part of my own. Section 2, the unspoken bond. As weeks turned into months, our silent routine blossomed into a fragile friendship. The seasons changed outside the diner window, from the last stubborn leaves of autumn to the first snow of winter, and with each passing day, the unspoken space between us shrank. I started leaving little notes under his coffee cup. Just simple things. Hope you have a warm day, Mr. Martin, or the tomato soup is extra good today. At first, he'd just fold them carefully and slip them into his coat pocket. Then, one day, I came to clear his table and found a reply scrawled on the back of my note in a shaky hand, "It is warmer now. Thank you." My heart swelled. It was more than he'd said to me in 3 months combined. From then on, our correspondence continued. He even started speaking more, his voice raspy from disuse. He told me his name was Arthur, but he liked that I called him Mr. Martin. He told me about his wife, Eleanor, who had loved gardening and the smell of rain. He always spoke of her in the present tense, as if she had just stepped out for a moment. I learned to read his moods. On days the tremor in his hands was worse, I'd cut his toast for him in the kitchen, arranging it neatly so no one else would notice. He never acknowledged it out loud, but the look in his eyes, a mix of gratitude and quiet dignity, was all the thanks I needed. On days he seemed particularly low, I'd tell him a funny story about a customer or a silly mistake I'd made, just to see the corner of his mouth twitch into a smile. He wasn't just a customer anymore. He was the anchor of my day. I found myself genuinely looking forward to 7:15 a.m. If he was a few minutes late, a knot of worry would twist in my stomach. One Monday, he didn't show up at all. The diner felt cavernously empty. The corner booth was just a booth again, cold and vacant. I spent my whole shift watching the door, my anxiety growing with every hour. He came back the next day, apologizing softly that he'd had a bad morning. The relief that washed over me was so profound it startled me. I realized then that my small acts of kindness had woven a bond that was just as important to me as it was to him. It was a simple, human connection in a world that felt increasingly disconnected, a friendship built not on grand gestures, but on daily care and shared solitude. Section 3, The storm arrives, and then came the day the storm broke. It was a Thursday. Mr. Martin had just left, and I was clearing his table, smiling at the note he'd left me about a bird he'd seen outside his window. The bell over the door jingled, but with a jarring force that made me jump. I looked up, and my smile evaporated. Standing in the doorway was a man in his late 30s, dressed in a suit so expensive it looked totally out of place in our humble diner. He had Mr. Martin's eyes, but where the older man's were soft and clouded with memory, this man's were sharp and cold as ice. He was flanked by two other men, both carrying sleek leather briefcases. They scanned the room as if they were about to condemn it. The man in the center, the grandson, strode right toward me. His polished shoes were unnervingly silent on the linoleum floor. "Are you June?" he asked, his voice clipped and devoid of warmth. I could only nod, my throat suddenly tight. "I am. Can I help you?" "My name is Aiden," he said, stopping directly in front of me. The two lawyers positioned themselves on either side, a human wall of intimidation. "I'm Arthur Martin's grandson." "Oh," I said, a wave of relief washing over me. "It's so nice to meet you. Your grandfather just left." "He's such a wonderful, I know all about my grandfather," Aiden cut me off. His eyes narrowed. "And I know all about you." The relief vanished, replaced by a chilling dread. This wasn't a friendly family visit. The air crackled with hostility. The lawyers just stared at me, their expressions blank and assessing, like they were calculating my worth and finding it wanting. "We need to have a conversation," Aiden continued, his voice low and menacing. "About your relationship with my grandfather." "About what, exactly, you think you're doing?" My simple, quiet world of coffee and kindness was over. The fight had begun. Section 4, The accusation, my heart hammered against my ribs. I clutched the damp dishcloth in my hand like a lifeline. I don't understand," I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. The few other customers in the diner were now watching, their morning chatter dying down to an uncomfortable hush. One of the lawyers, a man with a severe face and silver hair, stepped forward. "Miss, is it June?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. "We are the legal representatives for the Martin family. We have reason to believe that our client's grandfather, Mr. Arthur Martin, is being subjected to what the law refers to as undue influence." Undue influence. The word sounded foreign and ugly. I looked from the lawyer to Aiden, whose face was a mask of cold fury. "Undo what? I just serve him coffee. I'm his friend." Aiden let out a short, bitter laugh. "Friend? My grandfather is a vulnerable, elderly man. And you," he said, his eyes raking over my worn apron and tired face, "are a very attentive waitress." He laced the word with poison, making it sound like a crime. Mr. Martin is a very wealthy man, miss, the second lawyer chimed in, his tone condescending. A man of his means attracts a certain type of attention. People who see an opportunity. Wealthy? I was floored. I thought of the few coins Mr. Martin left every day, the worn collar on his coat. I'd assumed he was on a small pension, that he was as financially strapped as I was. The idea of him being wealthy was so absurd it was almost laughable, but the grim faces in front of me told me this was no joke. I had no idea, I said, shaking my head. And it wouldn't matter if I did. I've never asked him for a thing. I've never taken anything from him. Oh, we're not so sure about that, Aidan countered, his voice dropping. He's been changing his financial arrangements. Making sudden, uncharacteristic decisions. Decisions that, oddly enough, seem to coincide with the start of this little friendship of yours. They were twisting every kind gesture, every moment of connection, into a calculated act of manipulation. Cutting his toast was fostering dependency. Leaving him notes was psychological pressure. The bright light bulb wasn't a thoughtful gesture, it was part of a larger scheme. They painted a picture of me as a predator, a cunning schemer who had targeted a lonely old man for his money. The first lawyer opened his briefcase and slid a document across the table. This is a cease and desist notification, he said coldly. You are to have no further contact with Mr. Arthur Martin. Not in person, not by phone, not by little notes. Any attempt to do so will result in immediate legal action. I stared at the paper, my vision blurring with tears of frustration and hurt. I was being legally barred from seeing my friend. They weren't just questioning my motives, they were erasing our entire relationship. You're wrong, I whispered, looking at Aidan. You're so wrong about this. About me. And about him. Aidan just stared back, his expression unyielding. My grandfather is now under professional care, and his family is handling his affairs. Your services, he sneered, are no longer required. Section 5, a glimmer of hope, the days that followed were suffocating. The diner, once my sanctuary, became a prison. Every time the bell jingled at 7:15 a.m., my head would snap up, a jolt of hope followed by the crushing weight of disappointment. The corner booth remained empty. It was a wound in the room, a constant, glaring reminder of what I had lost. I went through the motions of my job, my smile feeling like a cheap mask. The loneliness I'd felt before Mr. Martin was nothing compared to the profound emptiness he left behind. Aidan and his lawyers had isolated him completely, just as they had warned. I had no way to reach him, no way to know if he was okay, if he was scared or confused. Did he think I had abandoned him? The thought was a physical pain, a sharp twisting in my gut. I felt utterly powerless. About a week later, I came home from a grueling shift to find a thick, cream-colored envelope in my mailbox. No stamp. It had been hand-delivered. My name was written on the front in an elegant, unfamiliar script. My heart pounded as I tore it open. Inside was a formal letter from a law firm I didn't recognize, and clipped to it was a smaller, sealed envelope. The letter stated that the enclosed item was entrusted to them by their client, Mr. Arthur Martin, to be delivered to me in the event he became unreachable. My hands trembled as I picked up the smaller envelope. On the front, in that familiar, shaky handwriting, was my name, June. I sank onto my small sofa, my breath catching in my throat, and I carefully broke the seal. My dearest June, it began. If you are reading this, it means my grandson Aidan has arrived and is likely causing a great deal of trouble. I am so deeply sorry for whatever hurt he and his lawyers have inflicted. Please, don't for a second believe that their version of you is the person I see. For years after my Eleanor passed, my world was gray. The days were long, the house was silent. My family, busy with their own lives, saw me as a duty, a problem to be managed. They didn't see the man who was drowning in silence. Then I walked into your diner. You didn't see a problem or a duty. You saw a person. You gave me a brighter light bulb, June. You have no idea how much I needed that light. Your small kindnesses were the scaffolding that helped me rebuild a life worth living. You reminded me that connection is still possible, that a shared smile can be more valuable than any stock portfolio. Aiden isn't a bad person, but he is his father's son. He sees the world in terms of assets and liabilities. He can't understand that what we shared has no price tag. Because I anticipated this, I took certain steps. I made my wishes clear, and I made them legally binding. The man who delivered this letter, Mr. Davison, is my personal attorney and a trusted friend. He knows the truth. Don't let them silence you. Don't let them rewrite our story. You are the family I chose. Tears streamed down my face. It was Mr. Martin's voice, clear and true. He hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't believed their lies. He had been fighting for me before the battle even began. The letter wasn't just a comfort, it was a weapon. It was a glimmer of hope, and a promise that this fight was far from over. The bond between June and Mr. Martin shows that the simplest gestures can have the most profound impact. We all have the power to bring a little light into someone's day. If this story moved you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that celebrate the power of human connection. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you?